Hive, hello, the Hive. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is going to be a very loosey show because my notes were kind of, although I had taken a few notes, but they were all over the place. And I'm also planning to record the show with Jeff tomorrow. I had to get all that prepped for him and sent to him, and then I have to call him when this is over. So it's a lot going on. So I apologize. I had to move the time around a little. Happy Easter, everybody that celebrates, I should say. How is everyone doing today? We are here to do our knee jerk reaction live for episode 805, Send for the Devil. And this episode was fire. We didn't have the print shop fire, but it's fire in a lot of ways. I can't believe we're halfway through. Only 5 more episodes, you guys. It's terrible. Just terrible. Now everything's going to be the countdown instead of the count up. Hey, Kathy, Vicky, Lillian, how you doing? Hello from Long Island. Hello from South Jersey. How is everybody? Hey, hi, Brenda. Yeah, it's tough to know that we're at the halfway mark. And now all the big guns are coming in, all the big gun writers. So these last episodes are going to be some humdingers, for sure. So we are here talking about episode 805, Send for the Devil, written by Luke Schelhass. I never know how to say his name. Schelhass, maybe? And it's directed by Naill MacKormick, who is new to the Outlander verse, but also directed Rebus with Rick Rankin in it. And so I kind of think it's interesting that Rick Rankin got a good amount of story this time. Maybe that's why they put him in these episodes, because he will have a little more, although I didn't see them at all in next week's episode. I saw no previews with the Max. So I'm hoping that we don't just forget about them. It looks like it's going to be primarily the Ridge and then what's happening with Ian and Rachel in Mohawk country. So I'm hoping that doesn't mean we just don't even do anything with the Max. We have to do something because of where we left off with William. There has to be a fallout from that. So they can't just drop it completely. Hopefully they will be longer in time. I know, Vicky. Me too. Yeah, I'm hoping we get like an hour and 15 minute, an hour and 10 minute, like longer, a longer chunk. It was interesting because Sophie posted a whole bunch of BTS things, and one of the things that she posted was a piece of script. And I kept going, I'm so sad that we don't get these scripts anymore. I used to use it so much for my shows, and to analyze what they had intended to put in and then what they didn't and what got cut, and kind of incorporate that in the stuff I discussed. But it was cool. I read the one page that she shared, and in that one page, there was stuff cut because she talks to him about sitting where Amaranthus was sitting so that she could still paint the way the light falls on a subject. And so she kind of got that little bit of light talk that you get in that chapter in the book where she talks about, she uses that analogy to the way she writes about how the light falls. And so they kind of tried to throw a piece of that into the script, but it didn't make it. Hey, Connie, Lillian. Yeah, this was a great episode. I kind of have it very close to or tie with last week, as I put that at 5. Like, we're getting a lot of really good episodes now. A couple minor things. The synopsis for this episode was, with the siege of Savannah raging outside the city walls, Bree and Roger find themselves on opposite sides of the conflict, and Jamie confronts his demons at Lodge Night. So, and that's pretty much like we had a hyper focus on these two storylines and going back and forth. And both of them had a lot of parallels where you have people waiting it out to see what happened and nervous about who they were going to lose. You had that with kind of like Bree and William, and you had that with Elspeth and Claire. We had them kind of in unexpected things that happened and trying to cope with it all, like between Roger in the fight and Jamie and his men in the fight. So you're kind of, I could see how they like really structured this as a parallel story between the two of them. So that was really good. So just some general thoughts. This episode, I think, was the shortest yet, which I did not like that part of it. they needed to make this one, I think, longer, if anything. I had so much that I really loved about this episode. Very couple like minor issues. I'm kind of tossing between a 4.85 honey pots and a 4.9 honey pots. And I really did love it. So it may go to 9. One of the things I really loved, and I know this is going to be one of my bests or whatever I do, the hits and misses, that's what it is, hits and misses in the shows. One of my hits for this episode is the bear flare. The bear flare in this episode was outstanding. Like outstanding. Hey Donna, tell Mom I said hi. Hey Lara. Hi Kyle. How you doing? The bear flare was so good in this episode, and through that entire everything that happened on the ridge, that whole fight sequence, that added so much. Like you were on the edge of your seat, and part of it was the way that the music and the soundtrack was working with the episode, kind of had you with this intense feeling. And then at the end, you know, when Cunningham and the whole posse come rolling up, dun, 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 you know, you hear the theme coming in for him, like, okay, time to pay the piper music, you know. And it was so good. So good. Thank God. Yes. Thank God you had the Ordsmere people. There was a lot of things that were circling back in this show as well. Like you're seeing them doing this with all the episodes. I am worried about, I'm wondering how lost poor Jeff is, because he hasn't seen any of these earlier episodes to get all of the circle backs that they're doing. But they did a lot of them in this episode. And it really does make this season feel so cohesive to the rest of the saga. You know how each season is its own like little thing, you know, like it's kind of, I mean, they do have progression of the saga, but you have like the Voyager episode and it's all that kind of a theme and its story. And then you have the drums episode as they're making their home on the frontier, and that's the story. And now this season, you're getting a lot of these circling back to season 1 and circling back to season 2. And you saw quite a bit in this episode as well. It has some really interesting twists and interactions. We also got a sense of a lot of intimacy within the scenes that came through again. While it was a lot going on and intense in a lot of ways, there was also these really beautiful, like intimate scenes between Roger and the guy that he helped, you know, and then Roger and little Henri Christophe, and just all of that. You see these moments between Claire and Jamie. You see moments between, no, it was intense. It was a one-on-one thing between Cunningham and Jamie showdown, and it was that intensity of a mano a mano thing going on, you know. So there was just a lot of great performances within it as well. Of course, William and Bree, fabulous, all of that. Some of that I actually liked better than the book. Dare I say the sacrilege, because there were things I wanted the book to do that they didn't, and we got it on the show. But then the part that I didn't like that we got in the book that we didn't get in the show was a lot of the progression of William being big brother, Brianna going through the camp, helping her get connected, speaking for her with people, helping her find him, you know. When she found him, it's like he wasn't even around. And I didn't like that. I kind of wanted him more involved in that part. I just felt like we cut all that and jumped, which I didn't really like that aspect of it. But we did get her telling him about her upbringing, her parallel story to his, which I felt was important. And I don't think we got that in Bees. So, and I felt like I wanted more of that kind of a conversation. So I'm glad we got it on the show. One of the things I'm noticing now that we're at the halfway point, you can really see that the cast is all giving it their all. At first, I kind of tacked it on to, oh, well, they were doing it for Katrina and her episode, great performances. But as I'm going, you can sense that they all came into this season knowing it was the last season and wanting to just do it as top as they possibly can, make it as excellent as they can. And you get that sense they really are putting their all into these scenes. They're not mailing it in, you know what I mean? And just going through the motion on anything that you would do if you were in the middle of a long stretch of the show. They know, like, this is it. And and they came back especially to be able to end it well for people and to have a really solid final season. And you can see they all are taking it seriously and making every moment count, because for them, they're watching it all go down too now. You know, they're seeing each episode wrap and knowing like we don't have much on. And you just see them really wanting to fine tune it all. And I love that, you know, because it matters to them just like it matters to us. So, the person I thought was the most standout, which it's hard to pick, but I'd have to say Cunningham. He was really good in this episode. Oh my God, wait till I'm going to get to that. But he was really good in this episode. You just saw so many colors and flavors in his performance and nuance. Very good. And it was cool to see all the post-interview stuff, that where you find out that he and Sam have been friends for a while. So they kind of had a vibe of each other. They could play off each other well. They knew each other a little bit. So I kind of like that too. The title is Sent for the Devil, which is Jamie's forced to actually take another step into fulfilling Frank's book prophecy, history, whatever, with the added bits from the 96 coming that he didn't know about until it got told to him. With that added bit, he had to be forced to call in a favor from Cleveland and them, which now puts him in their debt. And now puts him having to pay them back by being there in this battle, you know? The same old call, it's a callback to all the times that they kind of have an intention of like, well, if we know there's going to be a fire on this state, why would we be there? And if we know about what's going to happen at Culloden, that we might be able to stop that. And so at this point, like, I think part of Jamie knows, like, if this is supposed to happen, we're not going to be able to stop it. And it's almost like a resignation. Like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to do this. And he's seeing how it's going to play out. So I thought that was very good. So that was part of it. And I also think Ben's appearance is part of it, because now going to be kind of like a devil that he turned his coat. We also see the continuing theme over the season of the circle of life and legacy and family ties. And I feel like you saw it a lot with Bree and William having this shared tie back to her story, her referencing things like when she told her mother, you should have been the one that died, and all these different things gets referenced back to have a light on William's situation. So sorry for my hands. I've been having a lot of problems with my hands, so I got my braces on here. Anyway, so we have a lot of those types of things, echoes. But the main thing that I saw a lot of echo in this episode was back to season 1 and 2 of Dougal. Now that you see Buck in it, and the way they've worked that circular aspect into this episode was brilliant. And I'll talk about that as I go in a little bit. Then the title card was the drummer boy, Henri Christophe, that Roger connects and saves him. Now, Henri Christophe is a real person. That little black kid that was the drummer, he's a real person. He was one of the Haitians that were brought over to fight, and he becomes instrumental toward Haitian independence when he grows up and becomes the first king of Haiti. So that kid, basically, Roger saved him, and he ends up doing all of this great stuff in real life. So I thought that was cool that they kind of touched in there. We got the Je suis prêt, little echo between them talking in French. Just so many great pieces and little bits in here. There's actually in Savannah, I know Carrie's in Savannah, there's a monument to all the people from Haitian, all the Haitian people that came over and helped in the siege of Savannah. And one of them is the drummer. And I took a picture of the little sign. And it says, the drummer represents young Henri Christophe, who participated in the October 9, 1779 Battle of Savannah. Christophe later became a leader in the struggle for Haitian independence from French colonial rule, ending in 1804. A commander of the Haitian army, he became the King of Haiti, being among the first heads of state of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. So I thought all of that was very cool. Just a lot of little bits that they put in here. The director and the writer. Director applies a lot of really great perspective shots, tracking shots, like over the shoulder shots, terrific on the action stuff and the stunt work and all of that stuff. I mean, it was a little bit of a directing challenge, this particular episode, because there was a lot of action in it. And I like the stunt work and the fight between Jamie and Cunningham. Very good. And it kind of gave you this Old West vibe toward the end, where all the people were out on the balcony with their rifles, and up come the little gang, the posse, up on the thing, and the music had that little vibe, and you just felt like a showdown at Frasers Ridge. It was very cool, really cool. I really thought it was great. And for Luke has a very interesting style of writing, because he's been a long-term writer on the show. So I kind of have a feel of him, like I have a feel of Daniel Barrow, like I have a feel of Tony, because once you get into these people that you've seen a lot of episodes from them, you get to know how they operate. If this wasn't as hectic as some of Luke's episodes are, because it was very highly focused into two storylines. We didn't have any of Ian, we didn't have any of Lord John, we didn't have anything else than these two storylines. The fight on the ridge, and William and Bree, who then eventually looking for Roger, and Roger in his fight. That's pretty much the focus. So it felt a little more focused than some of his eps are, but he's a great writer, producer on the show. He often has a construct of dual storytelling in his episodes that have parallels and crossovers. He tends to write with a gothic tone, and you kind of saw that in this episode, this little bit of like a gothic horror show in spots, kind of this macabre feeling in spots. And then at the end, it shifts into a gothic Western vibe. So it had that kind of a sense as well. Let's see what you guys are saying. So many echoes back to season 1. So many. We're going to go over some of them as well. Jamie really likes Buck. He said to Claire, he's like you or one of you. I know, that was great. Now it's like his first cousin is now a time traveler. It's getting closer and closer to him. He's this gene pool. Even though the fight sequence was good, Nicole says, I kept wondering where all the other men were. Well, it's a big ridge, they were hunting people. And there's they only had like 7 men total or so. So they had to kind of spread out and find people and get people. I missed William saying my sister. Miss William saying my sister when he introduced her at the camp. You mean? Yeah. The man in the woods that Roger was helping reminded me of the boar hunt at Leok, where the guy that had his intestines spilled in his hands, that guy. Yeah. Yeah, there was so many callbacks and just so beautiful. I kind of feel like that was such a huge thing for Roger in the book. Actually, that's one of the last chapters of Bees I have done that I'm going to get back to once I get through this season. We kind of stopped right around when the siege of Savannah was happening in the book. So that's one of the most recent ones I broke down, was that chapter. And it was just so monumental, and so the way she wrote that chapter from Roger's point of view. And it's something that really makes a change in Roger. He understands fully who he is and what he is in that whole scene. And I'm not sure all of that comes across, what his journey is in it. But I think they did as good of a job as they could. It didn't look like what I pictured the Siege of Savannah to look like. They said they're approaching through the marshes, but there wasn't any marshes. So that didn't really look like what they were describing it as, things like that. So let me see. I missed the part with Bree and William. You mean the part where they come into the camp? Is that what you mean? Because, yeah, I missed that too. I missed him helping her, standing up, talking on her behalf. Even if they didn't have John Cinnamon, like that wasn't necessary for them to still show that. And I didn't like the way she sees Roger across the thing. William's not standing by her side. William is almost like an afterthought meeting Roger, and they barely even say anything to each other. I wanted to see, like, he was William, and that's it. And then at the end, you see William say, oh yeah, feed them, put them to bed and clean them up. And like as if they knew each other, to kind of talk in that casual way. You get the impression they've been there talking, but we didn't see any of that. And I would have liked to see Roger react to her brother and talk to him and seeing how that would go and all. I was looking forward to that. So, and I kind of wanted him there. That was one of the parts. Hey, how about Swami, Queen Bee here, calling that stuff with Ben? I called it perfectly. I was so proud of myself when I saw that play out. perfectly how I pictured it was going to play out, that he was going to just kind of turn around and that was going to be that Ben's there in that camp. I knew it. I knew it. I'm so proud of myself. The thing that I got wrong now was when she does the little smile after her and Roger come back together, and I predicted that it was William that she was smiling to, and ended up that that was Denny. Because William just happened, oh, he knows me too. It's like an after thing. And I didn't like that. I would have rather it have been the way I said. But I was very proud of myself with the Ben call. Let's see. The Green Angel, it seems like 1,000% effort and authentic camaraderie. Yeah, every scene they're trying to make sure it counts. I wonder if there was a part there that they cut with the Bree and William going to the camp. Man, I hope so, and I hope that if there is, that it's on the DVD, because I really missed that, and I appreciated that we got all the conversations at the house that we got, because we didn't get that as much in the book. I wanted more William and Bree conversations in the book, and her to tell him about her father and how she went pretty much felt the same way he did. And then she said, I told my mother that I wish it was her instead. And she kind of looks like, God, I can't believe I said that, to my mother. And, here's how much now that I worry about something happening to her all these years. You could see all that going on her face. And then she looked at William and his legs sound familiar. And William's like, how'd you get over it? And you finally feel like he has somebody that he can connect to. And so that was just really all great. I loved all that. And it was stuff I wanted in the book that we didn't get in the book. So it made me really happy to get it in the show. I'll talk more about that when I get down to it. I think they cut some of their trip to the camp out. Was it that they were able to get into camp in the first place? Yeah. I think that they probably just came into with a flag of truce now to say that we're here on a mission thing, and my sister's husband is here, and that they probably directed him to the dead. I think he's doing a service for the dead. She knew to walk toward there and saw him through the thing. So I just felt like I wanted William to be a bigger part of it, for him to see the reunion and react to it or something. I just didn't like that he was completely out of the picture of everything in the camp. Cleveland turning up too late. I don't know, because we never really got a thing about 96. So maybe they were the reason that 96 didn't show up, the people from 96. Because maybe Cleveland and them got rid of them or headed them off or something. The other people they got, the people on the ridge, they caught them and took their weapons. Buck said something like, they won't be feeling so brave anymore. They're regretting their moment of braveness or something. I forget what exactly the line he said, but that was the people on the ridge. That wasn't 96. So the people coming from 96, they might have been cut off by Cleveland and them. Okay, I see Vicky said the same thing. Go to the scene. Yes, Judy, I'm going to talk about that. Judy says, great fight scene, thought of the scene with Jamie and Dougal and then seeing Buck save Jamie. There's all of this kind of infinity coming back upon itself thread around Dougal and Buck and Jamie in this episode, which I'm going to point out to you. I love Roger Goes to War. It was fine in the show, but the book is so powerful. Oh my God. The book had me, the way she wrote that whole chapter with the teeth and the blood, everything. You could see they were trying to get that across. You see Roger say, like, out loud, what am I doing here? Like, he thought that in the chapter, and you see him looking at all the men going, and some of them weren't going to make it. You saw his heart kind of go out to that and him be moved in it. So you saw like all of these little things that if you knew what they were trying to do, you were getting it, but because of the book. But I'm not sure all of that's going to come through to show people all of the undertone of what they were doing. You know what I mean with that? And then we got that flash, which I'm going to talk about too, which I don't know if people are going to grasp everything with that either. I know, Lucy, are you proud of me? Are you proud of me on that call? I was very excited with myself that I picked that out, because I thought, how are they going to adapt this? They can't have him go off somewhere. And then I thought, I bet you he's going to be in the camp. I knew it. I kind of feel like it's early for the reveal of him, but I guess not, especially if they're going to probably fight and have their tussle in this next episode. and then Amaranthus. I thought we were going to be spared the cuppage. And not only did we get the cuppage in this episode that I hate, okay, but we got even more of complete, like, what is this? What do they think this is? Bridgerton? This isn't Bridgerton. You know, when you're in the middle of this square, you got houses all around the freaking side of you that all share this gazebo walk thing. Grief. It's like, please. Oh, God, I can't stand her. I remember that from the book. Cleveland was late because they headed off 96. Yeah. Yeah, Roger asked for a sword in the book. Yeah, I don't think this. Lisa said people on Reddit were saying that they couldn't understand why Roger was just wandering around. I don't think that the show only people got it at all. Yeah. I don't think they did. I don't think they understood the momentous element. Although he did do the voiceover, which kind of gives you a little bit of a thing, you know, about whom shall I send? Send me, you know, that whole thing. But I'm not sure people got it. And I think because I had heard some complaints that why do we need to spend that time? It's when all this danger's happening on the ridge. But they don't understand that's important. I mean, it is. It's very important for Roger and his arc. And Lord knows they've neglected Roger so far this season. He needed a good episode that showed him off a little bit and gave him some cred. Point blank, little Omri Kristoff that eventually becomes the king of Haiti. He's likely only breathing because of our Roger, because he got him to Denny quick enough. So there you go. Haiti is saved. Thanks to Roger. Susan said, I did not think William would let Amaranthus mount him in public. It's too out of character for him. I know. And the thing is, and I'm going to get to this too, I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but I don't even understand what the hell happened in that scene. You know what I mean? I thought it was the cuppage scene of the books, okay, or the fingering, whatever it is, that they were doing, and him feeling their juicy mound in his hand and all that crap. That's what I'm thinking this is, right? Then she goes on the thing, which, okay, that could still be it. He's wearing his full clothes. He's wearing, no pants came off, nothing got pulled out. There was no motion like that, okay? She got on again with the straddle sex. She got on, right? And then all of a sudden, his hands were like on her hip and her back. So he's not fingering her anymore or anything, but she's there bouncing, but there's nothing pulled out of pants or anything like that. So I didn't even understand what the hell we were supposed to think actually happened in that scene. Are we supposed to think they actually had sex in that scene? Was the intimacy coordinator off where he was supposed to be fingering her to climax, and instead he had both hands around her butt and her back, so there was nothing going on in that regard? I didn't understand the whole scene anyway. Okay, so Diana said did a post today, and she said this was one of her favorite episodes, and not only because 90% of it is from the book, including Jamie writing the declaration of Arbroath to the lodge and Roger ministering to the wounded at the Battle of Savannah, and nonstop, she says. So Diana liked it. We get thumbs up from Diana. Okay, so we cold open with a scene with Claire, who's in her little bee hat, and note that she has now multiple skeps, multiple little beehives that she has in a row. I think there was like 3 of them. So she is growing her little beehiving operation. And I really took note of the costumes as well in this episode. Claire's costume is really great. She has all these extra pockets and really cool layered materials and so forth. And Bree's costume had like the green tartan for her identity as a Scot when she's going to go meet and connect with William and stuff. You see her all in that. So I really just love all of these incorporations into the costuming. And I like this opening scene because it was very much like an everyday on the ridge thing. You got Claire doing her little beehiving. You have Jamie like eating his honey with his fingers and calling it ambrosia, which gave me a little Lord John Frizon, because that's what he says all the time. And enjoying his honey, and it's very much like Ridge Life, hashtag Ridge Life. And she says, do you have anything you'd like to tell the bees? They didn't think very much of me telling them everybody left us again. And he says, not everybody. And he looked down, and you have Buck down there. playing with all the kids. You can see that the kids just adore him. He's like fun Uncle Buck. And they can see the relationship he has with them, which is nice. And remember how before last week, I was making a joke about how they were all like, your family, stay, you know, and by the way, I killed your mother, I killed your father. You said it was making a joke out of that. Well, here they open with that very thing, which I thought was funny. And I feel part of me thought at first it was because they knew people would be thinking about it, so they wanted to just basically address it. But then as the episode developed, I saw a whole different intent in that. And the intent is to bring back to the mind of the reader that scene where they kill Dougal, because that is going to be rippled all through the episode, which I thought was so cool. How Luke tied all this together. As they're watching Buck and they're talking about killing his parents. And just Buck coming to the Ridge, I think that has been one of my favorite changes from the book so far this season, was having Buck come to the Ridge and be part of the people there and stuff and help Jamie when everybody's away and all of that. And you see, you know, Claire say, did you tell him that we killed his father? And he says, no, I didn't tell him that. And I didn't tell him that you killed his mother either. She's like, let's keep that to ourselves, you know? And I'm thinking, as they're sitting there, she's doing her bees and he's eating his honey with his fingers and they're saying that. And I thought to myself, like, you know, just normal conversations with Jamie and Claire, you know, talking about the people they've killed, you know, hilarious. But I thought it was also a good point too for all these people that are like, oh, you made Claire a murderer. She has a doctor's oath and she's not supposed to kill anybody and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, she's killed other people. So I'm glad that they brought up how she lopped off Gaelus's head, you know, and that was after her doctor's oath. That was season 3. So, you know, Claire, when motivated properly, she can commit violence if she needs to, or if she is infuriated enough that somebody hurt somebody of hers. So I really thought it was great how Buck was ready. He went from this child playing it, you know, to immediately the twig snapped and he's immediately on alert. And he ordered the children back right away. I just love this whole thing. And Jamie could see by his motions that something was off. And it was kind of like this nonverbal communication, warrior to warrior, noting his actions are not somehow shifted, you know? And so he goes down. And like I said, this episode had a lot of circular references and callbacks to Dougal and Jamie's complicated relationship. We got an echo with even the kids' play. If you remember, in the early, what was it, Act 2 or something, when Claire comes out on the banister and you see Dougal there playing with the kids and let's go at it. And he's doing like little sword fighting with his son, Hamish, and other kids, like you and me against them and all that. It was kind of like a little echo to that side of Dougal, right? And then the warrior alertness when he heard a crackle, you know, in the woods. Him saying to, like, I'm pointing out a whole bunch through the episode, him saying to Jamie, why don't we just kill him now? You know, you have the surprise. He wouldn't know what's coming, you know, and just get rid of him. And so it's very much like a Dougal mentality in that. And then the positioning of Jamie in the fight, where all of those moves were like the fight that he had at the end, which I love that they're bringing that up in the beginning of the episode, what happened, that fight that we killed him. And then at the end, the choreography of the fight that he has with Cunningham really mirrored a lot of what happened with Dougal in a lot of ways, from the knife going down, like him having to kind of fight, the knife going to his chest, then him trying to lean his weight down on it, but there's no Claire to help him. So Jamie reaches his hand back, grabs a drawer and clobbers him over the head, which is what Claire did when Dougal had the advantage on Jamie. She came over and clobbered a chair or a box or whatever was on the side and smashed it over Dougal's head. It was a lot of these like little mirrors in it, to the point where Jamie was about to be killed. He had no other way out. And boom, Buck saves him. The thing that is almost like a reversal of what happened with Dougal. So there was all of this like mirroring that was going on and callbacks to early seasons of Dougal, and that this was his lineage down. And he, you know, now Dougal's lineage has saved him. Dougal's lineage has married his daughter. So there's like all of this really complex, eternal, infinity vibe going on with this callback to early Dougal, this idea that Jamie always talks about, he made his peace with Dougal. So I just thought all of that was brilliantly done. It was very nice job by Luke. Probably should have killed him in Cleveland too. Yeah, apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? You're good at picking up the echoes. Well, I really love that aspect of this particular episode. Cleveland might have been Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland was the hero at Kings Mountain. Killing him would have messed up history big time. Yeah, let's see. So I just thought it was, and then when they come in to get tended, you see Jamie's positioning while Claire is tending him, and Jamie's positioning is like that same scene, the same look as when they were sitting in front of the fire, and he tells her about when he got flogged and he got captured at Fort William, in that scene where she's tending him, like was, I think, Ep 2 of the first season. So all of that was just like all this echo, back to the beginning, back to season 1, back to season 2. You're getting so much of that in this final season, and I love it because it's so perfect for the final season of a show that's been as long as this show and as complex as this show. Saga, adventure saga, like, because every season is different. And this one is now making it where you feel like every one of these other seasons like had some piece in this pie that now is going to matter for this story. You know what I mean? And so they're making it tie together as one story really well by doing that. So I really like it. You see them doing it over and over and over again. I like that they had Whitaker come in and warn him and really talk to him kindly. I felt it better in the show than in the book because you kind of have mixed feelings about the guy in the book, Cloudtree, because of the way he was to Agnes and all that. Where this, you just, you know, the guy had his normal wariness of white people in the beginning when he had come to them, but he wasn't overtly a bad guy. And so you kind of really enjoyed seeing him taking a chance because it was risky for him to do it, but to warn Jamie because he felt like he owed him. And I just like the whole position of that. And he gave him a lot of the 411. I mean, the nerve of Cunningham to say that he will soon be in charge of the Ridge. What a jerk, right? Very intense. Lord John's house, you really got different perspectives of the interior of his house, and I really loved it. I really love his decor. I like the palm tree paintings on the walls and stuff. It's just that like fresco, a lot of arches built into the ceiling and so forth. You know, the little palm trees, they really, when you think about this being filmed in Scotland and the way they're trying to make it look like Savannah with the palm trees and everything, it's kind of funny when you think about it because you ain't finding no palm trees in Scotland. So it's a whole different look. We got 3 really nice conversations between Bree and William. And the first one is where he comes in, she's nervous about the situation, and she tells him that her husband's at the camp. Oh, no. First it was the painting, right? That was the first one where she was doing the painting. And that's when she tells him her story. Did you get a chance to talk to Jamie? None of this was in the book because it's kind of was their interaction was a little bit at first antagonistic, and then they went searching in the camp, and they really never had this chance to talk about her history with Frank, how much close parallel it was to his story in a lot of ways, where he could say, oh, somebody else knows what I'm feeling right now. And I just thought it was really beautiful. We had 3 really good conversations between them. And the second one, he brings her the flag, which basically John had brought her in this book, where all of those interactions now are with William. So I like that. And I like their whole bonding. I always thought that Brianna would be a great character to bring William around because of their parallels. And I like that she told him her uglier parts of the story about what she said to her mother, how she hated it. She didn't want to accept it. She felt even more guilty because the father she always loved was dead at the time. Like he, you know, and then hearing how she talked to her mother, like he gets it. He goes, okay, like she's afraid, like they have the same initial snapback of response and fury about stuff. And he sees a little piece of himself in her. So I thought all of the William and Bree stuff, I loved it. I ate it up. I also thought Sophie did a really great job in this episode, you know, showing all the anxiety she was feeling over Roger. You really can see in this season how she's come a long way. And then when she said she was going to the camp, he says, I'll go with you. And I was like, yes, now we're going to get all the great stuff going into the camp and him being the big brother watching out for her. Not the big brother, little brother watching out for her and kind of taking the role of protector. We didn't get any of that, you know, which kind of was a bummer. That part of it I missed. Another little way that they cleverly worked something in was in the letter that we hear the voiceover of Roger doing the letter. It wasn't so much who should I send, but I was like that for me. And he references the Isaiah thing, that letter. In there, he talks about his father. And I wonder if my father felt the same way as I'm feeling, the same scared element that I'm feeling when he joined the RAF. And so it brings you in that letter, because I don't think he wrote all that in the letter in the book. But that was a way to remind you of that story, of the fact that he met his father last season and his father time traveled and all. I get it back into your frontal lobe, you know, of your front brain of going, okay, and having that reminder. And so that when you get that clip, you might have an opportunity to understand what you're saying. I don't know if show people are going to get it, to be honest with you. If show only people connect the dot, that little blink of a scene that you saw connects with the other thing and understand what it means. It was so fast. And I remember at the end of last season when they were talking about it, Diana talked about how it's only really explained in a very teeny brief clip in the middle of another very big action scene. And it goes so fast and it's so disconnected from the rest of it that I'm not sure if people are even going to connect the dot. Now I see what she meant by that, because she said it's in season 8. It's like a whole season apart from where it happened. And it's a little brief like drop of something into a whole other episode. And she says, I'm worried that people aren't going to make the connection. So at least they brought it up in the beginning in that thing that he wrote. And they did in the voiceover narration. So maybe people picked it up and understood that his father saved him in that moment. It still, though, doesn't explain what happened to the father, because in the book, as we know, the father lands with his head cracked open on the tracks. And in the show, in the flashback we saw before, they were sitting next to each other after he was caught on the little bench next to each other. So how does he die? And like, I don't understand what they're doing with that, you know? So we'll have to see what comes of that, because he has to die because Roger would have known him. So when did that happen? How did that happen? It's a little confusing. The flash we get now is before the piece that we had before of him sitting on the little bench. That was after he caught him, because they're both in the shot. So I don't understand how that's playing out and what that means. And I definitely, if I don't understand, I don't think people are going to get it. So I don't know. So you guys tell me what you think about that. Roger is really cute with the Henri Christophe, how he showed him his hand shaking and say, look, I'm scared too. You're going to be good. And then when he did his little prayer with him, when he was getting the bullet out of his neck and stuff, he says, he has courage and all that. Like, he basically called him courageous in his little prayer, and called him his friend. It was so sweet. You know, I really loved it. And then we get the J Sweet pray when he was getting ready to go. And he's like, are you ready? I am ready. You know, and I was like, J Sweet pray. You know, so we got that little nod. And I did like the whole idea that they referenced the Haitian thing, because that was a big part of Savannah. And Diana in the back of Bees does have a whole piece on that, on the Haitian involvement at the siege of Savannah. They did show a little bit of it. They showed the black troops marching into the battle. So they did a little bit of it. This whole thing is important for Roger because it helps him understand his purpose. So, whether the show people get it or not, like, it is important. When Brianna comes and she finds him and they run into each other, we get a nice little parallel of the siblings, William and Brianna, because when Brianna runs over and hugs Roger, she's like, "Are you in pain? Are you okay?" You know, she's elated that she found him. And then he said, you know, just a little bit of a something. And he like made a joke and she hit him in the chest and she's like, "How dare you? You scared the shit out of me." And then we had the parallel of that to William when he first sees Ben and he's so elated that Ben's alive and he's okay and all that other stuff. And they give each other this hug. And then as he looks at the general, whatever, epaulette, and he starts to look back and he looks at him and he says, "Hi, cousin." And then he punches him in the face. And so you kind of get this like little mirror action between the siblings. So I thought that was cute too. I liked that we saw Denny, but Denny isn't as incorporated into Ben's story, it seems, as he is in the book. And of course, that's probably because we don't have Dottie. Sad we don't have Dottie still. I guess we're not getting her, for sure. I was hoping we'd get surprised with her, but maybe not. I said here I was a little upset because we never really got William seeing her find Roger and William meeting Roger. We didn't get any kind of exchange of that. Just as they were leaving, you know, he's like, you know, you take him home, get him to bed and feed him. It's like a joke. But like you never saw how they bridged from even meeting and shaking hands or saying hello hardly to that. And I love how she said, you know, for a loyalist, you have a lot of rebel friends. And then that's right after that, we see that Ben himself is a rebel now, you know, so I love all that. Okay. The lodge meeting, the stuff on the ridge, Elspeth and Claire. So Elspeth and Claire, that was a really interesting thing because I liked also when they did a couple of the transitions, you would see Brianna looking out the window, waiting out the battle. And then you went from her profile to Elspeth's profile as those two women are waiting out what's going to happen. Who's going to come back alive? Who's going to be okay? You know, and all of that. I loved so much of that was from the book where she says, "We know everything." That whole exchange with her and Elspeth was just great. Everything from going to the lodge. I love that all of the people were in on it. You had Josiah going to get the message to the guys. You had Lizzie going, hiding the gun outside the lodge. Everybody's in on it, you know, and so that was great. And she's like, "We know everything." And I just loved it. Everything was so intense from the lodge meeting. They went in. I loved too the McDo. You got that like little callback of how he came out and all his Ardsmere men were there and they were all like, "Hey, McDo, McDo, McDo." So we get that whole like vibe of the Ardsmere time and how connected he was to his Ardsmere men and all of that. And then in the lodge, this whole episode, Cunningham had a much more sinister, everything's on the table. Like he really went from that charming thing to quite sinister. The whole thing was very intense. The whole part in the lodge where, you know, he gets up and he starts to talk about loyalty. And you just see Jamie giving him the look. And he goes, "Not that I want to talk about politics." He's like, "But since you did, I have something to say." And we're like, "Yes, go, Jamie," you know. And he goes and he does that whole Arbroath speech, which was great. And I love the way he delivered it. Great. And then we have Evan Lindsay doing the little closing prayer. And he does this extra long prayer to like buy Jamie time to get outside. And then as soon as that prayer thing is over and you see Cunningham lift up his head and sees him gone, boom, he comes out with a curse word. So it's just, you can see that just kind of shows how all of this is being put on by him. And it was just really great. The whole fight sequence, and from when Jamie went to the lodge, it was very intense. And the score through all of that was what really ramped up the intensity. The score through that was unbelievable. Pay attention to it, like it really kind of sucks you in and like you're on the edge of your seat with that score. And the action of the fight was amazing. It was just so good. It had me gripped to my seat. What'd you guys think of that? Were you impressed with the bear flare in that whole scene? Throughout that scene, I was really glad I hadn't listened to the soundtrack first because I haven't actually sat and listened through the whole soundtrack yet. But I'm really glad because I would have known, I would have been like, I know this music and I didn't. So it was like I could appreciate the flair of it and what it was doing to the scene because it was the first I was hearing it. So I love that. Let's see. And also the way this director shot, the way he took shots was very much from perspectives and weird angles, like showing different people's perspective as Roger's running through the battle and Jamie's, fighting Cunningham and they're going through the woods and circling around. Really, really good. The other thing that I wanted to talk about before the fight sequence, when he's in the trading post, right? And Jamie's in the trading post and he turns around and you hear, hello, Mr. Fraser, or whatever. And you turn around and you got Cunningham standing there with the light silhouetted behind him. And he looks very piratical in that shot in the doorway, with his silhouette. He kind of looked really commanding and intimidating. He had the ponytail going. He had a much more of a tough, dashing almost like a pirate vibe in that, very commanding. And the fight was just all of a sudden you're seeing him in this whole different light, when he puts his gun down, but he really had a plan with the knife behind him and, taking like that cheap shot to try to look like he's going to get one over. And so you are seeing the Cunningham aspect of him, the cunning of the Cunningham in that. Diana D on Cunningham. And this was funny because Diana referenced this conversation almost that she had with me in the Parade article this week, because I was the one that she was talking to about Cunningham and the change that they made from making him a naval captain in the books to Army captain in the show. And so she had said to somebody else, I guess they wanted Cunningham to be forming a militia, as he does in the book. The show presumably thought this was not the concept that would spring to mind of a sea captain and thought a post-army was a better fit. They constantly change details and occasionally rather more with the explanation, well, we thought it made better sense if we blah, 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 right? And so then I said to her, I said, dear Diana, I interpreted that change was to draw an even more adversarial situation with Jamie as they fought on opposite sides of the same battle, also the same battle that killed his son. It makes everything personal. And with little time to develop storylines, I thought it was a positive change for the show medium. She replied, oh, I don't disagree. She said, I just know who Captain Cunningham actually is. And she put the little grin, like, in her mind, like the real Cunningham, And she said, he's a sea captain, which means he's a man who will take on the sea, a person who will take on the sea, who will take on just about anyone else, and is much more used to making his own decision in the midst of chaos than an army commander who's usually within a day's communication with headquarters. But in fairness, that's not something that can either emerge clearly or be very useful within the limitation of an hourly TV show. So as I say, I don't disagree with your reasoning at all. So that was pretty cool that she said that. But I really like the way they did this. Cunningham was outstanding. It was an epic episode for him. And I feel like he's not going to be recognized enough in the episode because everybody's going to be focused on Jamie and what he did and the thing with, Cleveland, stuff that happened with Roger. And then William and Bree, and then William and Amaranthus, and all of that. So I hope he doesn't get lost in the shuffle, but he really, really showed his talent, I think, in this episode. Even him cursing at the end of the prayer shows you how cunning he is. And I said, hence the Cunningham name. And then Diana does that with names. Like, she tends to make the name in some way connected to the character of the person. She does that a lot. It has relevance in some way without being overtly relevant, being over the top. Not like a Harry Potter book where, the names all have to do with the character. But in a more subtle way, she does that. And she does it with a lot of characters. We'll have to do a topic talk sometime to kind of talk about why she chooses different names and how they layer with the character. She sometimes does it after saints. She does it after what the name means when you look up the name meaning. Like, for instance, Claudel means crippled person, somebody that was lame in some way. So, like, just different little bits that she adds. So Cunningham was Cunningham for a reason. He had a cunning element to him. He knew how to play a role and have an agenda. But this is Jamie frickin' Fraser that we're talking about here. Jamie frickin' Fraser, who was the nephew and grandson of Colin Mackenzie, Dougal Mackenzie, and old Jacob. And he was also the grandson of the twister, Simon Old Fox Fraser himself. So it's going to be hard if you think you're going to outfox Jamie and get one over on him. You know what I mean? As much as you're cunning, you ain't cunning enough, you know? So I really thought, when I was reading the book, I was really sad that Jamie had no people with him. He had no Roger, he had no Ian, he had nobody, you know? But now it was nice that we had a Buck here, you know? And Buck was almost like a Murtaugh feeling character in the episode, like watching Jamie's back, having Jamie's back, being somebody from his own peerage of time and old school family from, you know, being Dougal's son and all that. I said, I'm loving the turn of having Buck there. I know it's not book or not probably what Diana's doing with it, but I really do love it. And I'm sure I'll love what she does, I'm sure. But I love this choice. I didn't like it with Murtaugh because I felt like it hampered the growth of Roger and other people. But I like it here, keeping somebody in it that's not in the book, I'm saying, because it's the end of the show and it doesn't hurt anything in the future. And so I'm a lot freer now when I watch the show. I'm finding I don't mind if they take more chances or do things different or whatever, because I don't have to think about how it's impacting the future. So I feel like I'm being much freer in my watch than I was even last season or earlier seasons. I can just say, well, let's see what they do, you know, and have that kind of a thought about it. And way out the back of my mind going, oh crap, now they did this. How are they going to make this work? Now this is going to run in and bite them when they get to this part. Like, I don't have to think like that, you know? So that's really been freeing and made this so enjoyable this season to watch. Like, we're just going along for the ride. For a villain, he's a villain with a whole different vibe than even past villains. So I really like that he has a different perspective. I like the way it was shot with the female counterpart, balancing what was happening out with the Lodge Night with what was happening with these two women sitting there, having their kind of almost a verbal duel, you know, between them, and then having their waiting out paralleled with William and Bree. They did a lot to cross over the storylines a bit, you know, with what the topic and the tone of the scenes were that were crossing over. The one thing I want to know what you guys think about is Hiram. Do you think Hiram is going, because in the book, Hiram like tried to get away from the whole Cunningham thing and stay with Jamie on Jamie's side. And you got the impression from when he was in the lodge, like talking, he was observing the situation, but it didn't look like he was necessarily down with it. And then when they left, Cunningham put a gun in his hand. And then when Jamie went to knock him out, you know, he started to say, but you don't understand, or Mr. Fraser went like he was going to explain something. And then, you know, Jamie knocked him out. So I'm curious, do you think he's going to be redeemed a little with Jamie, or do you think that they've just made him part of the bad guys with Cunningham? Before I go on, let me check what you guys are saying. I like the way they're pairing these scenes to past scenes in the episodes instead of doing flashbacks. I am too, Christine. I love it, showing everything, tying it together for the final season. Rima says, I like him better in the show too. I'm not sure who you're talking about there. Actually, there are palm trees on the west coast in Dorney. Oh, really? Oh, in Scotland? I didn't know there was palm trees in Scotland. Must be really southern Scotland then. Really liking Bree this season. Hey, Ruth. Really neat to see William softening in his attitude toward the Fraser family. Yeah, you could see. So he said, how did you get over it? She said, I got to know our father, you know? And I like how she keeps putting that in there to make him face it. Rima says she misses William repeatedly saying my sister like he did in the books. Other than that, I loved it. Well, he did say it to Amaranthus last time. I think he dies in the novella. You mean Jerry? Yeah, he does die in the novella. But they kind of are not showing it like that exactly in the show. They're showing it like he's sitting next to him on the bench from last season. And then this season when you see him being caught, which, by the way, I love the way that they shot that, where he gets thrown back with an explosion. That's what he said to Bree. Oh, just a minor explosion. I got in the way of a minor explosion. That's what she said. She scared the shit out of me, you know. Anyway, I like the way that explosion was timed with the kid going back, and it kept cutting back and forth into that moment to show you why it would jog a memory for him. So we'll see what happens with that. Vicky says maybe he'll show up at the Ridge and be part of the Max Happy Ever After. I loved Roger speaking French. Me too. It was hilarious when Brianna shoves Roger. Very book Brianna. Yeah, it is. But it also was a nice parallel with William and Ben, you know. That's the second time that Jamie's directions have nearly gotten Roger killed. Happened at Alamance too. You know what's funny about that too? I kept thinking, I really wish they would have had a conversation between Jamie and Buck about how they first met Roger. Oh, well, I had him hanged, so I had to try to make up for that. And I beat the crap out of him and sold him to the freaking Mohawk as whatever. You know, like both of them have that in common, that they completely practically killed Roger when they met him. So kind of funny. I wanted Dottie too. People are shipping Denny and Lord John. Oh, God. Well, you know, he keeps hinting, David Barry, something about he may have a little something with somebody. I'm hoping it's not. I don't know if it's going to be Percy or what, but he acted like there was a romantic thing, you know, that may happen for him. I was on the edge of my seat in the lodge meeting. I was in my edge of my seat, the lodge meeting and all of the stuff after, and the fight at the trading post was very gripping, and the score was made even more intense. Love that Jamie repeats the Arbroath speech. Yeah, me too. Vicky says, I appreciated the music too. I loved how it all brought up the emotions without being obvious. I was on the edge of my seat because the music as much as the scenes, but the music was more on a subconscious level. You know, next time you watch that episode, listen for the score, like pay attention to it. It was really phenomenal what it did. And then with the end, when Cleveland comes in, and you know, dun, 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 you know, Cunningham was a commander warrior mode. Yeah, he really looked like dangerous, you know, dangerous. And when he said, I'm putting my gun down, and he started to talk, all of a sudden, the way he lunged, and he was so like, you didn't think he was going to be that quick of a mover and whatever. He had some moves. He had some skills, you know, and it made you also think of Dougal, because Dougal was no slouch when it came to fighting. Jamie was in trouble one-on-one against Dougal because the two of them are both warriors. He's the war chief for a reason. And here you have Buck's son. Buck also has that vibe. It's in his blood, and you can see Jamie appreciating that too. It was just so good. It was such an intense scene. Lisa says, then they have Elspeth say one of her husbands was a sea captain in order to explain her foul language. Elspeth like Elphaba. St. Fergus was missing a hand. Oh, see? So that's interesting too. And then Claudel means lame one or something like that, crippled one. So yes, Cunningham wasn't as cunning as a fox. Jamie is the king of men. Love having Buck there. I think Hiram will be explaining in the next episode to redeem him. After all, he's the owner of the post. Yeah. I think Cunningham is redeemable. Cunningham? You think he's redeemable? Well, they made it sound like he's there till the end. Hiram Crombie came and talked to Jamie after, and he didn't participate, but he didn't warn Jamie. And so Jamie kind of has a little bit of but you knew what was going down and you didn't warn me. You know what I mean? It was that type of thing, but he didn't help either. Hiram will be redeemed to run the store. Yeah, and then he connected Fanny with, that's right, tried to get Fanny with his nephew. Angus got caught in a minor explosion too, yeah. Hiram was annoying in the book, Lillian says, but he was definitely more on Jamie's side than he is in the show. I do not like Hiram in the show and be happy if Jamie kicked him off the ridge. Yeah, because they didn't make him partnering, you know, with Cunningham in that way. You know, that's a different kind of bond, you know. Christy says, I hope not Percy. I don't like him. You know, he's not my book Percy version of my way I think of Percy from the book. Yes, Donna. He's currently paralyzed. He's going to have to spend his 5 bonus years in a wheelchair. And then what happened was, and I knew this too. I said, I bet you it's Buck. that's going to end up being the one that shoots Cunningham in the back. And then when they were fighting and you saw Cunningham step out and his back was to the open space, and he reaches down to he gets the gun, and he's like, I really didn't want it to come down to this, Fraser, very westerny vibe. I didn't want it to come down, but one of us has got to go, and it's not going to be me, and all that wasn't the plan. I love that too. That wasn't the plan. And then Jamie goes, plans change. And we get the little echo of the conversation that he had with Claire. That was another great little stroke. Like, was all in the writing, all the stuff that Luke did to help tie all of this together with both each side of the story and with the past seasons was really well done. And then within the episode, he did a lot of things on all three of those levels to make this episode work. And so all the stuff with Dougal, Buck, Jamie, it almost felt like this little echoey, like things were slightly different, but they had the echoes and the flavors of being the same. Do you know what I mean? So I really thought that was cool. Like sound bouncing around a room where it's closed in. That's kind of the vibe you got, where it hits you in a different way, but it's very similar. Here I said, and I love the little echo thing with the plans change. And then him saying that wasn't the plan, and he says plans change. And then Cunningham's plans change because Buck stops his plan, and now everything he thought he knew with his haughtiness goes right out the door. And as soon as I saw him going out those doors backwards, I said, oh my God, Buck's going to shoot him in the back. I knew it was coming because I knew that was going to happen to him. And I thought, I bet you it's Buck that does it, because I could see how they were like doing all of this mirroring with Dougal. Thought it was so great. His confidence in himself, that haughtiness that he had in that moment. And I think that Diana also made this one of the main moral punch lessons of this book, or of this whole storyline, is how just because you think you know history, you have to remember history is written by the victors. So sometimes it's not exactly the way you thought it was going to be. They don't always tell the same thing, and there's also always different perspectives of it. There's little loopholes in it, like this situation. Yeah, you'll live for 5 more years, but you ain't going to walk. So what is your life going to be? As my husband says, no quality of life. Like somebody like him that's, like Diana says, I take on the sea. I'm a man against nature. I'm a man against that can do everything and, owned my space. Now he's at everyone's mercy, which he would have never wanted to live like that. So it's really just such a great moral, almost fable-like, almost like you're reading an Aesop's fable or something, how the moral lesson comes back around on him in that. And so I love that. I'm glad that's kind of stayed. I mean, because in his perspective, you could see it in the way that his demeanor is in that whole scene through the whole fight. He has complete confidence he ain't losing this fight. He has complete confidence that it isn't going to be him that dies this day. He has no fear of Jamie whatsoever, in that moment, because he thinks for sure, I'm not dying here. So he's going to be the one that goes, ain't going to be me. And that haughtiness is why he doesn't take precaution to understand his environment. He doesn't take precaution to see what's behind him, because he has no fear. And that ends up biting him in the ass in the end. So I really love that. So now I saved one of the things I hate the most for toward the end. This pigweed friggin' scene. I can't even take it. Just first of all, her smug face when he was walking up behind her, and she knew it. And she's with the little cat that ate the canary face, and her little forwardness and everything. And then did you notice that she talked about, with the little double speak of the sexual undertone of the bugs that she still has to point out on his cloak, and she called it the fiery searcher, which would be little William, would be like the fiery searcher bug. And the twice stabbed lady was the other bug. So you go, Ben, and now William. So I'm getting a little inferring that she's doing with that. And then he comes back and he tries to flirt back, and she's like, you're not being very clever. Because she knows what she's doing. Ugh, can't stand it. She's an opportunist, succubus woman. She's like Gayless. I feel like she's like Gayless. I bet you she's somehow connected to that bloodline because she is like that. Unfortunately, William is falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. We have more straddle sex or whatever the hell that was. I don't even know. What do you guys think? Were they having sex? Were we supposed to leave thinking they had sex, actual penetration sex? Or are we supposed to leave thinking that she basically was riding his hand in that, but even though he has must have a third hand, if that's the case? I don't really know what to think in that scene happened, because it makes a difference, if they actually had sex or not, whatever. Because in the book, he didn't let it go that far because he didn't want to get her pregnant with child, because he remembered his own bastardliness. But now in here, they made it like a plan for sure they're going to get married thing. So it wouldn't make as much of a difference here. So I don't know what to think about it, but I didn't like any of it. I didn't like it at all. Just in case you don't know, I don't want him with her. In case you haven't figured that out yet. And also, Diana's quote in the parade piece makes me think there is still a little glimmer of a possibility in the book with Fanny, because she talked about how Fanny has a big crush on William, but she's still too young at this point for him to return that interest, or something like that, she said. As if to say, like, what, of course that's not going to be. Like, she didn't blow it off. She kind of said she's not at the right age yet for that type of thing. So maybe by the time the book ends, she will be, and that'll end up happening. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, and that all depends if there's actually a relation there, which we don't know. Anyway, the meeting with Ben and William happened just like I thought it was going to happen. It was something I loved, and I loved how they paralleled the way Brianna reacted to Roger. A lot of mirroring in this episode. Okay, and then Luke's writing. He has a little bit of a gothic flair in his writing. He wrote, remember the ep in season 5, I think it's 5, where they have the Beardsleys, where they go to the Beardsleys, and it almost turned into almost like this gothic horror vibe. That was a Luke Schelhass episode. So it has that kind of a odd twist. And the same as far as the duality thing, he also wrote the ep Wilmington, where you had the story happening with Brianna and Roger mirrored against the stuff happening with her operating at the theater on the guy while Jamie went to save Murtaugh. So he writes these kinds of weird storylines. He's a good writer, and I really liked his work in this. If you freeze frame that scene of her going around his back, touching his shoulder as he's sitting there with the sling around his arm, sitting there while she's walking around him, it really does look like that scene from 102. So it's almost like you're here almost at the end of the whole 8 seasons, and you go back to the very beginning and episodes that you saw in the very beginning of season 1, and I just like the way that feels of all the period of time that went between. Also, note they did some nice work on the makeup on Jamie's neck to show bruising that he's getting from when they did the rope. How about that scene where he put the rope around his neck and was tightening his rope to like choke him out, and you see Jamie looking like his eyes are popping out of his head. I was dying. I said, "Oh my God!" But they kind of did a nice job on makeup to show like that abrasion of the rope and so forth. So they really did a good job. They dotted their I's and crossed their T's on everything. It kind of fits the way that this is another little echo that I felt. Let me know if you guys felt like this. But seeing these guys, this posse, come up to the house and seeing the aggravation that Jamie has that now he's got to work with this guy, and that he's basically fulfilling this story from Frank. And when you see all the people positioned around the deck, and the guys coming in and saying, well, I'm only going to be pushed aside for so long, but I do hate me some Tories, and da-da-da-da. And now basically he's got to cope with them. And you know what it reminded me of? The Watch. I kind of feel like Cleveland and this posse that are kind of like the Watch of the backcountry. They're kind of like they're like teaming up with other people to protect these homesteaders from the loyalists coming to harass them. It's kind of like the Watch having to make a deal with people that are unscrupulous, which is why Jamie was upset at Ian for making, like, why did you let this happen? Why? I don't want to be connected to them. And here now he's got to be connected to Cunningham and this band of people looking to kind of be like the watch of the backcountry against the English. So I like those tie-ins as well that I got. And then you see Claire out there like Mom Baker with a rifle. And they're all sitting there, getting the farmstead, the homestead, bearing down on anybody coming up to mess with their homestead and their ridge life and everything. And you see her sitting there with her rifle, with her little prairie skirt thing going on. I'm telling you, it gave me such vibes of that. I felt like I was in an Old West movie. Then Blake was complaining about this not feeling like a midpoint episode last episode. And I had sent him an email and said, this isn't the midpoint. After next week is the midpoint. So hopefully he will think this was more of a midpoint episode than that. Okay. And I also can see where it's going to become a problem based in the way that things are laying out in the show. I can see where it's going to become a problem because Cunningham can't move. He has to lay there and be dealt with and get a chance to rehab and be treated and stuff. And he can't move. And, Cleveland is not going to be cool with letting him just be. You know what I mean? He's going to want him to be killed. He's not going to say, he's a Tory. He tried to go up and, he can't let him live. And Jamie is not going to be cool with killing somebody that can't walk and can't move and can't defend themselves. And so that's going to become an issue, I think, of contention there. Because I'm trying to think, what is he going to do to the end of the season that he's there all the way through the season? And so I think that's going to become an issue, where he's going to have to protect Cunningham against Cleveland, almost. You know what I mean? We see Denny. Denny felt like, I like the Denny bits with taking care of Kristoff and all of that, and Roger, and how they didn't know who they each were until they had a chance to talk, but we never got to see that. I would have liked to have seen that realization of who they were. Also, we know now that Denny is not connected to Ben. He doesn't realize who Ben is, that he's Dottie's brother and all that. That doesn't look like he knows. So that was interesting. The way that William played seeing Ben again, that was also really moving because you saw all the emotions wash over him. First, oh my God, how can this be? And just the joy that he had. And then the realization hit him and all of that. And then you bastard and punches him in the face, you son of a bitch, or whatever he called him. So now I'm going to talk about the preview. So let me see what you guys are saying before I continue. I remember that season when all I said was poor Roger, right? Percy swings the other way. He swings both ways. He prefers, though, Lord John, males, but he'll swing both ways because that's how he made his living. Wonder what name Ben is going by since his father and uncle are high-ranking officers. Well, yeah, General Bleecker, Raphael Bleecker. Cunningham's son needed to be very specific. Be careful what you wish for, right? Yeah, he got set up by his son there. She'll get her comeuppance once William confronts her about Ben. Now, see, that's the thing. In some ways, they really left us kind of on a cliffhanger because they're going to have to pick right back up with that scene. We're going to have to see how that pans out, which means that we're going to still see some of Savannah in the mix. So there has to be something there. Even though we didn't see it in the preview, they have to pick up that scene. Susan thinks there was penetration. Ruth says, I'm glad I wasn't the only one unsure about the sex scene. Vicky says, I think William doesn't need to be with anyone for his happy ever after. His happy ending would be with the Frasers getting to know his family. Lord John isn't with anyone for a while. It's fine. Think of the deer, my dear. Yeah, I mean, apparently there's going to be something happening with Lord John. And I agree with you. I mean, I would take maybe a promise of future thing and then have it be he has to get to know who he is. And that's his journey. But he said that he was very pleased with how his story wraps up. So I don't know if that means there's a woman in it or not. Anita thinks it was actually sex, but no 18th century woman would do that. Yeah, I agree with that. Vicky thinks they had sex. Carrie, hey Carrie, weren't the costumes gorgeous in this episode, Carrie? She says it may have been dry humping on his part. He may have kept his pants on. What a mess. Ask the laundress. Now, you know who you need to ask? Ask Lizzie, since she's such a pro at what a man's seed smells like. Remember that? I could smell his seed. Oh my God. What a line that was for her to say. How she just said that with a straight face, I will never know. Christy says, I always felt Fanny would be with William. She definitely has a crush on him. Yeah, for people that have an issue with age on that, right now it feels like that because she's still young. But understand, Marsley was 15 when she married Fergus at 30. Brianna is the same age difference from Roger as William is from Fanny. So it's really like in this world that's not like unheard of once she gets to be of an age to even be going that direction. You know what I mean? So maybe we'll see like a smile at each other or something like so there's a promise of something ahead, maybe at the end. Cleveland in the Black Watch. Yes, right? You really do feel it when you see them running up and you see them having to stand out there and you see Jamie like resigned. Oh God, I got to cope with this. And their attitude about it, like they really have very little scruples. It did really have a Black Watch vibe. Benjamin Cleveland, yeah, he's another. Like we have multiple villains, I think, in this whole season. Christy says, I didn't think they had sex unless the wool was moth-eaten. Okay, so on the preview, you see Jamie looking at Cunningham laying on the bench, and he says, well, what do you have to say now, Captain? Or something like that. And the captain says, are you going to kill me now? And he's like, no, you made your bed. Now you'll have to lie in it. And see, that's why I think that's going to become an issue. Because Cleveland, once he knows that Cunningham is in there, he's not going to be cool if Jamie's not taking him out. So I kind of think that's going to become a thing. And then we're seeing another story with a lot of Ian in the Mohawk area. And you see this guy was put out there that we saw like a thing that said he's cast in the later episodes of this season, Indian looking guy. And we saw this guy there kind of with this younger girl, and then he's there all decked out. And he says something like, oh, do you trust him? And Rachel says, I'm not sure if it's him I don't trust or if it's myself or something like that. And she says, that's what I'm hoping to find out or something like that. Like she's getting counsel or something here. So I'm not sure what that's about. I hope they haven't merged Sylvia's story where it becomes like a jealous thing of just like the whole other woman thing. I hope they don't turn that into something it wasn't in the book. Also, that guy, I don't know for sure if that guy, I thought at first it was Joseph Brandt, but now I'm thinking it might be the Sachem, like only a younger version of what we know the Sachem to be, just because it's almost like a council situation, you know? And maybe they're going to bring him in and maybe he's going to have input about faith. Because they're going to have to tie up this faith thing either between what he learns at the brothel or whatever. And remember, he in the story in the book, it's the Sachem that sees the ghosts and talks about a young girl ghost with Claire and talks about her husband, but he's more around your husband than you. So I'm not sure if he's coming into the situation and that's actually the Sachem that she's talking to, or if it's Joseph Brandt. But it's definitely one of them, I think. I didn't think we were going to get the Sachem, but now I'm kind of seeing how it would fill certain holes, so we might. So that's going on. And then we also saw all the bit, which is what the title of the episode is for, is all of the women coming to him to ask for mercy. And Claire kind of speaking on their behalf, and Jamie determined to exercise his ridge of all of these people that tried to hurt him, kill him on his property, and all that stuff. And he's like trying not to be merciful, and they kind of whittle him down, you know, that whole part of the story. So that's going to happen next episode. We probably will not see Roger or Bree or not see much of them, which kind of makes me sad. I do think we're going to see that scene that we saw when they were back at John's house, and we see in a preview or something somewhere, we saw Roger say, you know, maybe we came back because what we were meant to change was what was meant to be all this time, or something like that. He makes this thing, and I think it's because of that memory he had of his father. So I'm hoping that's discussed more when he shares it with her and he figures it out or something, and then this way the audience will connect it. Because I don't know if the show audience is connecting it. Yeah, the guy says, looks like she's being interrogated by the chief or Sachem. And he says to her, so you do not trust him? meaning I guess Ian. And she says, I don't know if it's him I don't trust or myself. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's like they're putting pieces of Sylvia and her distrust of her husband that left and ended up being up there with a different wife and stuff. I hope that they're not fusing that. He does have a one-on-one conversation with Emily. Remember that? And so maybe Rachel's talking to him while that conversation's happening. I don't know. And I hope we still get Emily giving him his name of Hunter, which is nice. Also, here's some things we haven't seen yet that I'm surprised about. We haven't seen Richardson yet. And I thought by now we'd see him. Is it going to be that the first time we see him is when he takes John? Is he like going to be in limbo? Also, another thing that makes sense in this whole thing is remember last time, in the very beginning, first episode, okay, when William is drunk, comes in drunk with John and all that, he said, I heard that there was a turncoat captain in the Savannah camp, and I wanted to see if it was Richardson. Probably the rumor he heard was about Ben. And Ben was the turncoat captain, because he was a captain. And now he's a turncoat, became a general. But that was probably the rumor he heard that he thought might have been Richardson, but it was now probably actually Ben was that person, which was kind of interesting when you think about how it all ties up. So I like that little connection. And the other thing we haven't seen, where the hell's Adso? Is Adso get eaten by the pig? I mean, what's the story with that cat? You know, they made a big deal of her saying goodbye and crying about leaving the cat. You know, I thought by now we'd at least see him. I guess he bit the dust. Is that what we're supposed to think? I don't know. So, any outlandish predictions on what's going to happen next? And then we're going to close out. I love Jenny and the Sachem. I mean, I don't see Jenny, and the Sachem is too young. That guy looks too young to be the Sachem of the books. But they might have just made it a younger guy in the show. And maybe he still comes back to the Ridge somehow. I don't know. I think the combo with Roger and Bree will explain the memory of his father rescuing him, Vicky says, but it might not be in episode 6, but in episode 7 instead. Okay. I think we'll get a little bit of touch of stuff, a little scene, but not a major scene with Roger and Bree. Just a small, maybe a small scene. And then what, the fire be the next episode, you think? Or do you think the fire is going to happen at the end of 6, bridging into 7? Or do you think the fire and everything about the fire is going to be in 7? Lisa says she hopes we get the humor of the women asking for mercy and not the usual show melodrama. Well, remember how they trapped them off? And Jamie was kind of like trying to be tough and he couldn't keep it up. Nicole says Adso went feral. Nita says Adso's contract expired. Yeah. Okay, so we definitely are going to see Joseph Brandt and all of that coming into play. Joseph Brandt, maybe the Sachem, because that guy did look very, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the Sachem or Joseph Brandt, but it kind of, the way that the conversation is makes it sound like the Sachem. I don't know. And he has a lot of key to the mystery of the, like if he says he sees an infant or a young girl, that's a ghost that's walking around her, he might have a different way that he connects that with people. I don't know. Well, of course, we got to still get the Master Raymond, however he's coming in. Is there anyone else from the past? Do you think we're going to get the comp? I vote Joseph Brandt, Anita says. If there's no Ginny, we don't need an older Sachem. Yeah, but the older Sachem is also like a wise man, and he also is like a half ghost. So he could bring in some of the woo-woo. But the thing is, he only comes back to the Ridge because of Jenny, because he has a little hots for Jenny. So I don't know how they're going to do it in the show, if that even happens. The Sachem was an old man, right? But they might change that in the show, is what I'm saying. It might not be an old man in the show. He was a hot old man, though, from the way that it was described in the book. He was probably like a silver fox type of thing. I don't know. Curious about if we're going to get the comp. I feel like there's more surprises that are going to come out of people from the past that are going to come in. Also, we haven't got the bit where Claire says in the beginning, remember that very first trailer we got where she says, is it possible? And they linked it in with hello, Mrs. Fraser. And then she says, is it possible? Remember, we haven't got that Is It Possible yet. I've been listening for it to see like where it fit in and where they cut it from. We haven't gotten that scene yet, whatever that is. So I feel like it's got to be somebody that she's not expecting to see, or somehow learning something she's not expecting to learn. I don't know. All right, you guys, much love. Bye.